The Grand Council chamber on Station Nexus Prime looked like something from a dream. Thousands of seats rose in circular tiers, each one filled with a different alien species. Some had fur, some had scales, and some looked like they were made of living crystal. At the center of it all stood a massive holographic display that floated in the air like magic. Ambassador Hyun sat in the human delegation section, her hands folded calmly on her lap. She had silver streaks in her black hair and wore a simple blue diplomatic uniform. Next to her, Dr. Yoonji nervously adjusted her glasses and checked her data tablet for the 100th time that morning. Chairman Vex Thor climbed onto the central platform. He was a Calvaxian, which meant he looked like a giant insect with 6 legs and eyes that sparkled like diamonds. His voice came through the translation system, sounding both musical and mechanical at the same time. "Distinguished members of the Galactic Trade Council," he began, his mandibles clicking together. "Today we address a matter of great importance, a matter of justice and fairness for all species." Hyun felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. She had been a diplomat for 30 years. She knew when something bad was coming. "The human species joined our council 312 years ago," Vex Thor continued. "They have traded with us, learned from us, and grown wealthy from our protection. But our accounting department has discovered something troubling." The holographic display changed. Numbers appeared in the air, glowing red. Very large numbers. It seems that humanity never paid their membership taxes, not once in over 3 centuries. According to Council Law, Section 4027, all member species must contribute to the maintenance of peace and trade throughout the galaxy. Dr. Yoonji grabbed Hyun's arm. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Ambassador, those numbers. That's not possible. The total amount owed," Vex Thor said with what might have been satisfaction, including interest and late fees, "is 847 trillion galactic credits." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Some aliens made clicking sounds. Others released chemical signals that the humans' translators couldn't interpret, but clearly meant shock. Hyun remained perfectly still, her face showing nothing. "You have 30 days to arrange payment," the chairman announced. "If humanity cannot pay, we will be forced to impose economic sanctions. Your trade routes will be closed. Your colonies will be isolated, and if necessary, we will take other measures to ensure compliance." The word measures hung in the air like a threat. Everyone in the chamber understood what it meant. "War." Hyun stood slowly. Every eye in the massive chamber turned to her. She could feel thousands of alien gazes, some curious, some hostile, some pitying. "Chairman Vex Thor," she said, her voice steady and clear. "The human delegation requests time to review these claims and consult with our government." "Of course," Vex Thor replied with false generosity. 30 days, as I said. We are not unreasonable." Hyun bowed slightly and sat down. Around the chamber, the other delegates began talking among themselves. The noise grew louder and louder until Vexithor dismissed the session. As soon as they were back in their private quarters, Dr. Yoonji threw her tablet on the table. "It's impossible!" "That amount is more than Earth's entire economic output for 60 years. Even if we sold every ship, every building, every piece of technology we have, we couldn't pay it." Hyun walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "That's the point. They don't want payment. They want control, but why now? Why after 3 centuries? Because we're becoming too powerful," Hyun said quietly. "Our colonies are thriving. Our military is strong. Our trade relationships bypass the Council's monopolies. Someone wants to put us back in our place." Later that evening, in a private dining room reserved for the wealthiest council members, Trade Minister Korra met with Merchant Prince Havoc. Korra was Felician, with sleek golden fur and sharp amber eyes. Havoc was Dravine, floating in his mobile water tank, his tentacles moving gracefully through the liquid. The humans looked shocked. Korra purred, sipping from a crystal glass. "Did you see the expression on their ambassador's face?" "She hit it well," Havoc's translated voice bubbled. "But yes, they know they cannot pay. And when they default," Korra continued, "the Council will have no choice but to seize assets, starting with those lovely asteroid belts in their home system. And their strategic position near the galactic core will finally be under proper supervision." Havoc's tentacles curled with pleasure. "My shipping lanes will double in value once we control the Sol system jump points. The other council members won't complain once they see the profit shares." "Do you think they'll fight?" Korra asked, though her tone suggested she didn't care either way. What can they do? They're one species against 800. Even if they wanted to fight, the Council fleet would crush them in days. Back in the human quarters, Hyun was composing a message to Earth. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic keyboard, but she chose each word with care. This wasn't just a report. This was a warning. Dr. Yoonji looked over her shoulder. What are you telling them? The truth. That this is extortion dressed up as law. That we have 30 days to decide if we'll submit to tyranny or stand up for ourselves. And what do you think they'll choose? Hyun finished typing and hit send. The message would take hours to reach Earth through the quantum communication network, but it would get there. I think they'll remember who we are. We didn't survive everything we've survived by bowing to bullies. She pulled up another screen, this one showing historical records. Images flickered past. The border wars where human ships held off 3 alien fleets with nothing but clever tactics and stubborn courage. The Merchant Guild conflict, where Earth blockaded a trade route until prices became fair. The salvage rights incident where humanity claimed an entire nebula and defended it successfully. Every time someone tried to push us, Hyun said softly, we pushed back harder. The galaxy thinks we're dangerous because we don't follow the normal rules. Maybe it's time to remind them why that is. Dr. Yoonji sat down heavily. 847 trillion credits. It might as well be 847 trillion tons of antimatter. Either way, we can't produce it, then we won't, Hyun said simply. What do you mean? Hyun turned from the window. Her eyes were hard as steel. I mean that Earth doesn't negotiate with extortionists. We never have. And we're not going to start now, no matter how many ships they have or how many species sit in their council chamber. Across the galaxy, in the Sol system, Admiral Sunwoo received Ambassador Hyun's message in his office on the moon's military base. He was old, with white hair and a face carved by decades of service. He read the message 3 times, then called his senior officers. Captain Minho arrived first. He was younger, only 40, but already a legend in the Earth Defense Forces. Sir? Your message said urgent. Sunwoo handed him the datapad. Minho read it and his jaw tightened. They can't be serious, they're very serious. And they expect us to fold, will we? Minho asked, though he already knew the answer. Admiral Sunwoo smiled grimly. What do you think, Captain? Should we pay 800 trillion credits we don't have to a council that wants to steal our home system? Minho's smile matched his admiral's. I think we should prepare the fleet, sir, just in case we need to have a conversation that doesn't involve credits. My thoughts exactly. Quietly, Captain. Very quietly. I don't want the council's spies to know we're getting ready. Let them think we're panicking and trying to find the money. As Minho left to begin preparations, Sunwoo looked at Earth hanging in the black sky outside his window. Beautiful, blue and green and white. Home to billions of humans who had no idea their entire future was being decided by politicians light years away. He wouldn't let them down. None of them would, because that's what humans did. When pushed, they pushed back. When threatened, they stood firm. And when someone tried to take their freedom, they fought. The 30-day countdown had begun. Deep beneath the mountains of Geneva, Earth's Security Council gathered in a bunker that had protected humanity's leaders for 2 centuries. The room was circular with a round table at its center. Holographic displays floated above it, showing star maps, economic data, and fleet positions. Admiral Sunwoo stood at the head of the table. Around him sat the most powerful humans in the solar system. Politicians, military commanders, economic advisors, and intelligence chiefs. All of them had read Ambassador Hyun's report. All of them understood what was at stake. We need to negotiate, said Secretary Kim, a thin woman in her 50s who ran the diplomatic corps. 800 trillion credits is insane, but maybe we can talk them down. Offer them something else. Trading rights, perhaps, or access to some of our technology. Admiral Sunwoo shook his head. They don't want to negotiate. If they did, they would have started with a reasonable number. This is designed to be impossible. Dr. Yoonji appeared on one of the holographic screens transmitting from Station Nexus Prime. She pushed her glasses up her nose and pulled up a series of charts. I've run the numbers every possible way. Even if we liquidated every asset Earth has, we could maybe raise 50 trillion credits, and that would destroy our economy for generations. So we can't pay, said General Park, a broad-shouldered man who commanded Earth's ground forces. What are our options? Admiral Sunwoo touched the table and the display changed. Military scenarios appeared. showing fleet movements and tactical simulations. We can fight. Our fleet is smaller than the Council's combined forces, but we have advantages. Better training, newer ships, and we'd be defending our home territory. That's suicide, Secretary Kim protested. Even if we won a few battles, they could just keep sending more ships. We'd be fighting 800 species. Not all of them would fight, said Director Cho from Intelligence. My agents report that many council members are uncomfortable with this demand. Some species remember the last time someone tried to bully humanity. The border wars cost the attackers 3 full fleets and gained them nothing. Admiral Sun Woo nodded. That's the key. Our reputation. The galaxy knows we're dangerous when cornered. They know we don't surrender. Every time someone has pushed us, we've pushed back so hard they regretted it. He pulled up historical records and the room filled with images. The border wars, where Captain Jiho's tiny squadron held off 3 massive fleets for weeks using nothing but asteroid fields and clever tactics. The Merchant Guild conflict, where Earth blockaded the Kelvara Gate until fair pricing was restored. The Great Salvage Crisis, where humanity claimed an entire resource-rich nebula and successfully defended it against all challengers. In every case, Sun Woo continued, we were outnumbered. In every case, they expected us to back down. And in every case, we won because we were willing to do whatever it took. But at what cost? Secretary Kim's voice was sharp. The border wars killed 50,000 of our people. The blockade nearly starved our colonies. Are we willing to sacrifice that much again? The room fell silent. Everyone knew the answer, but no one wanted to say it first. Finally, General Park spoke. Freedom isn't free. Our ancestors knew that. They fought wars on Earth for centuries to protect their sovereignty. Are we going to be the generation that gives up because the fight looks hard? Meanwhile, on Station Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council held its own meeting. But this one wasn't official. The species that really ran the council, the ones with the most money and the biggest fleets, gathered in a private suite that cost more per night than most planets made in a year. Trade Minister Cora lounged on expensive cushions, her golden fur perfectly groomed. Around her sat the power brokers. Merchant Prince Havoc in his water tank, Administrator Krell, whose species controlled the banking systems, Fleetmaster Rax, commander of the largest military force in the galaxy. Have the humans responded yet? Krell asked, his voice like grinding rocks. Not officially, Cora purred. But my sources say their Security Council is meeting. They're probably panicking, trying to figure out how to raise the money. They can't raise it, Havoc's bubbling voice said. That's the beauty of it. The amount is deliberately impossible. When they default, we seize their assets legally. No one can complain because we followed proper procedure. Fleetmaster Rax shifted his massive bulk. His species looked like armored bears, and he was twice the size of a human. What if they fight? Cora laughed. One species against the council? They'd be crushed in days, would they? Rax's voice was thoughtful. I've studied human military history. They don't fight like civilized species. They use tactics we consider dishonorable. Ambushes, traps, psychological warfare. In the border wars, they destroyed 3 fleets without losing a single major engagement. That was luck, Administrator Krell said dismissively. And they were fighting pirates, not a real military force. Those pirates had council backing, Rax reminded him. And council ships. The humans still won. Only one member of this secret gathering remained silent. Ambassador Thule stood in the corner, his 3-meter frame making him tower over everyone else. His iridescent scales caught the light as he listened to the others plot. Ambassador, what do you think? Cora asked. Your species has warrior traditions. Do you believe the humans will fight? Thule's eyes, golden and ancient, met hers. If I were human, I would fight. This demand is without honor. It is theft disguised as law. The room tensed. Cora's eyes narrowed. Are you questioning the council's authority? I am stating facts. The humans joined the council in good faith 3 centuries ago. They have honored every treaty, paid every legitimate fee, and caused no trouble except when attacked first. This tax is fabricated. You all know it? Administrator Krell stood, his rocky form crackling. Watch your tone, Torvian. You're either with the council or against it. Thule met his gaze without flinching. I am with justice, as my ancestors have always been. He left the room, and uncomfortable silence followed. Cora broke it with forced cheerfulness. Don't worry about the Torvians. They're honorable to a fault, but they won't actually oppose the council. They never have, but Merchant Prince Havoc's tentacles curled with worry. He had lived long enough to know that assumptions like that could be dangerous. Back on Earth, Captain Minho walked through the hangar bay of his ship, the Resilience. The flagship of Earth's defense fleet, she was beautiful. Sleek lines, powerful engines, and enough weapons to take on 3 enemy cruisers at once. His crew was already working, though officially they were just doing routine maintenance. Minho knew better. They were preparing for war, even if no one had given the order yet. A young officer approached him. Jiwon was fresh from the academy, barely 23, with short black hair and sharp eyes. She saluted. "Captain, the weapons systems check is complete. Everything is operational. Good. What about the stealth systems?" "Working perfectly, sir." She hesitated. "Captain, is it true? Are we going to war with the Council?" Minho looked at her. She was young, but she was smart. She deserved honesty. "I don't know yet. But we need to be ready. The Council thinks they can push us around. They think we'll surrender rather than fight. What do you think we should do?" Jiwon's jaw set. "We should show them they're wrong, sir." Minho smiled. "That's what I thought too." On Station Nexus Prime, Ambassador Hyun sat alone in her quarters. She had spent the day in meetings, listening to other ambassadors offer sympathy while clearly expecting humanity to fold. Some were genuinely kind. Others were already calculating how to profit from Earth's downfall. Her communication console beeped. A secure message from Earth. She opened it and read Admiral Sunwoo's words carefully. The Security Council had made their decision. They would not pay. They would not negotiate. They would stand firm and face whatever consequences came. But they weren't just refusing. They were sending a message. A simple one. One that would make their position absolutely clear to the entire galaxy. Hyun read the proposed response 3 times. It was bold. It was risky. It was perfectly human. She smiled for the first time in days. She began recording her reply. "Yes," she wrote, "I will deliver your message. And may the ancestors protect us all, because after this, nothing will be the same." Dr. Yoonji found her an hour later, staring out the window at the stars. "You heard from Earth?" Hyun nodded. "We have our answer, and in 15 days I'm going to stand before the Galactic Council and deliver it. One word that will either save humanity or start the biggest war the galaxy has seen in 1,000 years. Dr. Yoonji felt her heart pound. "What word?" Hyun smiled grimly. "You'll hear it when everyone else does. But I promise you they'll never forget it." Across the galaxy, humans everywhere were hearing rumors. Something big was happening. The Council had made demands. Earth was preparing for something. No one knew exactly what, but everyone could feel the tension building. In the asteroid belt mining colonies, workers stopped their drills and looked toward Earth. On the agricultural worlds, farmers paused in their fields. On the research stations orbiting distant stars, scientists put down their experiments and waited. Humanity was holding its breath. All 7 billion on Earth and another 3 billion scattered across 50 colonies, all of them waiting to see what their leaders would do. Ambassador Thule visited Hyun that evening. The massive Torvian had to duck through the doorway of her quarters. His scales shimmered in the soft light. "I came to offer my respect," he said in his deep voice. "And to warn you, Hyun, 15 days had passed in silence." The Galactic Council waited. News networks across 800 worlds speculated endlessly. Would humanity pay? Would they negotiate? Would they simply abandon their colonies and retreat to their home system? No one expected what actually happened. The council chamber was more crowded than it had been in decades. Every seat was filled. Delegates who normally skipped sessions had shown up. The gallery was packed with journalists, merchants, military observers, and curious citizens from 100 different species. Everyone wanted to see how the humans would respond to the impossible demand. Chairman Vexthor stood at the center podium, his crystalline eyes glittering with confidence. He had spent the last 2 weeks carefully positioning his allies. Ships were moving into place near human colonies. Economic sanctions were prepared and ready to activate. Everything was going according to plan. The chamber fell silent as Ambassador Hyun entered. She walked alone down the long aisle to the human delegation section. Her blue diplomatic uniform was perfectly pressed. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a simple style. Her face showed no emotion at all. Dr. Yoonji sat in her usual seat, her hands gripping her data tablet so hard her knuckles were white. She knew what was coming. She had helped prepare it. But that didn't make it any less terrifying. Ambassador Hyun, Chairman Vexthor began, his voice carrying through the chamber's speakers. The 30 days we granted humanity are not yet complete. However, your request to address the Council has been approved. Does Earth have a response to our legitimate tax assessment? Hyun stood and walked to the central platform. Thousands of eyes watched her. Cameras from every major news network in the galaxy were pointed at her face. She could feel the weight of 10 billion human lives resting on what she would say next. She reached the podium and placed her hands on it. The metal was cool under her palms. She looked up at the circular tiers of seats, at all those alien faces waiting for her to beg, to plead, to offer them something valuable in exchange for mercy. Instead, she activated the main holographic display. Her face appeared on every screen in the chamber, and on every screen receiving the broadcast across the galaxy. In her Mars colony apartment, a construction worker stopped making dinner and stared at his television. In the asteroid belts, miners paused their work. On Earth, billions of people held their breath. Hyun spoke one word. Her voice was clear, calm, and absolutely final. No. The chamber exploded. Delegates leaped to their feet. Some shouted in outrage. Others clicked, chirped, or released chemical signals of shock. The noise was deafening. Chairman Vexthor's mandibles clacked together rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. Hyun stood perfectly still, waiting for the chaos to subside. She had expected this reaction. She had prepared for it. Order. Vexthor's voice boomed through the speakers, amplified to painful levels. The chamber slowly quieted. Ambassador Hyun, you cannot simply say no to the Council's lawful demands. Hyun met his gaze calmly. I just did. More shouting erupted. Trade Minister Korra was on her feet, her golden fur bristling. This is outrageous. The Council will not tolerate such disrespect. Hyun turned to face her directly. Minister Korra, humanity has reviewed your tax assessment carefully. We have examined the relevant Council laws. We have consulted with our legal experts and economic advisors, and we have concluded that this demand is not legitimate. It is extortion. Gasps rippled through the chamber. No one had ever accused the Council of extortion in an open session. It simply wasn't done. Dr. Yoonji activated her tablet and financial data appeared on the holographic display. These are Earth's tax records for the past 312 years. Every payment, every fee, every contribution we have made to the Council. All of it documented, verified, and accepted by your own accounting department. The data scrolled past. Thousands of transactions. Billions of credits paid over 3 centuries. All legal, all proper, all recorded. We have never missed a legitimate payment, Hyun continued. We have honored every treaty. We have followed every rule. And now you claim we owe you 800 trillion credits based on a law that was never applied to us when we joined the Council. The law applies to all members, Chairman Vexthor insisted, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Then why, Hyun asked quietly, weren't we required to pay it 300 years ago? Why wasn't it mentioned in our membership agreement? Why has no Council auditor ever raised this issue in over 3 centuries? Silence. No one had a good answer because there wasn't one. Hyun looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegate after delegate. I will tell you why. Because this tax is a fabrication. Someone in this Council decided that humanity was becoming too successful, too independent, too powerful, so they invented a debt that could never be paid. They thought we would be forced to surrender our sovereignty to satisfy a made-up obligation. This is slander. Merchant Prince Havoc's bubbling voice protested. You have no proof. Dr. Yoonji smiled grimly. Actually, we do. The display changed again, showing financial records, communications, and planning documents. All of them had been carefully leaked by sympathetic Council members and intelligence sources over the past 2 weeks. They showed Trade Minister Korra and Merchant Prince Havoc discussing the tax scheme. They showed projections of profits from seizing human assets. They showed everything. The chamber erupted again, but this time the shouting was directed at Korra and Havoc, not at the humans. Delegates demanded explanations. Some called for investigations. The carefully constructed conspiracy was falling apart in front of everyone. Hyun waited for the noise to die down, then spoke again. Her voice cut through the chaos like a knife. Humanity will continue to honor all legitimate obligations to the Council. We will continue to participate in good faith in galactic trade and diplomacy. But we will not be extorted. We will not surrender our sovereignty. And we will not pay a single credit of this fraudulent tax. She paused, letting her words sink in. And if the Council chooses to enforce this demand through sanctions or military action, humanity will respond with every resource at our disposal. We have fought for our freedom before. We are prepared to do so again. On Earth, in the underground bunker in Geneva, Admiral Sunwoo watched the broadcast with his senior officers. When Hyun finished speaking, he nodded with satisfaction. She did well. Now it's our turn. He touched a control and across human space military broadcasts activated. Captain Minho on the bridge of the Resilience received his orders and smiled. Stand by for deployment. All ships to combat readiness. Young Officer Ji-won felt her heart pound as the ship's systems came to full power around her. She had trained for this. She was ready. Earth was counting on them. Back in the council chamber, Chairman Vexthor struggled to regain control. The human delegation will be held in contempt for these accusations. Guards will escort you from. Ambassador Thule stood. His massive 3-meter frame dominated his section of the chamber. His voice was like thunder. The humans speak truth. I have examined the evidence. This tax is fraudulent. The Torvian Confederacy will not support its enforcement. More delegates began standing. Smaller species who had long been intimidated by the Council's power brokers saw an opportunity. If the mighty Torvians were questioning the Council, perhaps they could too. The ambassador from Kelvar stood. We also have questions about this tax. Kelvar was never assessed such fees. The preliminary delegate rose. Nor were we. Is this tax applied fairly to all species or only to those someone wishes to control? The carefully orchestrated plan was falling apart. Chairman Vexthor saw his political career crumbling. Trade Minister Korra and Merchant Prince Havoc were already being surrounded by Council security, questions flying at them from all directions. Hyun walked back to her seat. She had done what she came to do. Earth's position was clear. No negotiation, no surrender. Just one simple word that would echo through history. Dr. Yoonji grabbed her arm as she sat down. Her voice was barely a whisper. Did we just start a war? Hyun looked at the chaos in the chamber. Maybe. Or maybe we just prevented one. The next few days will tell. Across the galaxy, humans celebrated. In bars and homes and ships and stations, they cheered their ambassador. She had stood before the most powerful organization in known space and said no. One word, simple, defiant, perfect. The word spread like wildfire. News networks played the clip over and over. No. Ambassador Hyun's face calm and determined. No. Her voice clear and unwavering. No. It became a symbol, a rallying cry. A reminder that sometimes the right answer to a bully demanding your lunch money is just one simple word. But symbols don't stop fleets. Words don't disable weapons. And while humanity celebrated its defiance, others prepared for war. Trade Minister Korra, before being escorted away by security, managed to activate her personal communicator. A single command went out to her private fleet. Execute blockade protocol. Target Sol system. Merchant. Prince Havoc, from his water tank, sent similar orders to his merchant vessels. Close all trade routes to human colonies. Begin economic siege. Across the galaxy, ships began moving. Not the official council fleet, not yet, but private military forces, mercenaries, and ambitious captains who saw an opportunity to profit from humanity's defiance. On the 24 hours after Ambassador Hyun spoke her defiant word, the galaxy was in chaos. Stock markets crashed on 15 major trading worlds. Shipping companies canceled routes through disputed space. Insurance rates for vessels traveling near human territory tripled overnight. And in the Sol system, Earth's defenders prepared for what everyone feared was coming. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the Resilience, studying the tactical display. Red markers showed hostile ships gathering at the edge of the system. Not the official council fleet, not yet. These were private military forces, mercenaries, ships belonging to Trade Minister Korra and Merchant Prince Havoc. How many? He asked his tactical officer. 43 confirmed, sir. Maybe more hiding in the outer belt. They're forming up near the primary jump gate. Minho nodded slowly. A blockade, then. Classic opening move. Cut off trade. Isolate the target. Force them to negotiate from weakness. He smiled grimly. Too bad we're not very good at being weak. Ji-won sat at her communication station, monitoring channels. Sir, they're broadcasting a message. Standard blockade declaration. No ships in or out until humanity agrees to pay the council's assessment. Send to Admiral Sunwoo. and prepare our response. On Earth's moon in the Military Command Center, Admiral Sunwoo watched the same tactical display. His senior officers stood around him, waiting for orders. The old admiral had seen enough wars to know how this would play out if they weren't careful. "They want us to fire first," he said quietly. "If we shoot, they can claim self-defense. The council can say we're the aggressors. So what do we do?" General Park asked. "We show them we're not afraid to fight, but we don't give them an excuse." He activated his communications array. "Captain Minho, move your fleet into defensive positions around the jump gate. Make it very clear that anyone trying to enter our system will have to go through you, but do not fire unless fired upon." "Understood, sir," Minho replied. The Resilience moved forward, and Earth's defense fleet followed. 23 warships, not as many as the enemy had, but newer, faster, and crewed by people fighting for their home. They took up positions that blocked the jump gate access, their weapon systems active but not locked on targets. It was a chess move, daring the blockaders to make the next one. On Station Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. But this time the mood was very different. Chairman Vex Thor no longer sat at the central podium. He had been removed from his position pending investigation. A temporary chairman, an elderly Kelvar named Morix, presided over a chamber filled with angry, confused, and frightened delegates. "Order. Order, please." Morix's voice was thin but determined. "We must address the situation in the Sol system. There are reports of military confrontation." Ambassador Hyun stood. "With respect, Chairman Morix, there is no military confrontation. There is an illegal blockade by private forces. Earth's fleet is merely defending our sovereign space." Several delegates shouted at once. "The humans started this by refusing legitimate demands. We should send the official council fleet to enforce order." Ambassador Thule rose to his full 3-meter height. "I suggest we wait for the investigation into the tax assessment before we take any military action. If the tax was fraudulent, as evidence suggests, then humanity was right to refuse it." The chamber divided. Some species supported investigating before acting. Others wanted to preserve council authority by enforcing the demand regardless of its legitimacy. And many smaller species watched carefully, realizing this fight would determine whether the council served justice or just powerful interests. While politicians argued, Dr. Yunji worked quietly behind the scenes. She had been preparing for this moment for 2 weeks, gathering allies and information. She met with ambassadors from smaller species in private rooms, showing them evidence that the tax scheme wasn't unique to humanity. "Look at these financial projections," she told the Kelvar ambassador, displaying data on her tablet. "Korra and Havoc planned similar schemes for 6 other species. Yours was next. They were going to claim your people owed 200 trillion credits for historical trade violations that never happened." The Kelvar's antenna quivered with rage. "They targeted us specifically because we've been expanding our merchant fleet. They wanted to eliminate competition, exactly. And if humanity falls, you're next. But if we stand together, we can stop them." Similar conversations were happening across the station. Dr. Yunji wasn't just defending humanity. She was building a coalition. Species that had never worked together before were finding common cause against council corruption. Back at the Sol system, tensions rose. The blockading fleet hadn't moved, but they hadn't backed down either. Both sides waited, weapons ready, knowing that one mistake could start a war. G1 monitored communications constantly. She intercepted messages between the blockade ships. "They're arguing among themselves, sir. Some captains want to withdraw. Others want to attack." Captain Minho nodded. "Good, keep them confused. As long as they're arguing, they're not shooting. Sir, one of their ships is breaking formation. It's moving toward the gate. All hands to battle stations. Target that ship with fire control systems, but do not lock weapons. Let them know we see them." The human ships responded instantly. Every weapon system on 5 different vessels tracked the approaching enemy ship. The message was clear. 1 more meter forward and you're in our firing solution. The enemy ship stopped. Held position for 30 seconds that felt like hours, then slowly, carefully backed away. Jiwon let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "They're returning to their formation, sir." Minho allowed himself a small smile. They blinked first. He knew what that meant. The enemy wasn't committed to this fight. They were mercenaries, not soldiers. They'd been paid to blockade, not to die. News of the confrontation spread quickly. Across the galaxy, people watched live feeds of the standoff. Two fleets, weapons ready, neither willing to fire first. It was the kind of tension that could break 1,000 different ways. On Station Nexus Prime, Dr. Yunji received an urgent message. Merchant Prince Havoc's financial network was collapsing. The revelation of his conspiracy had spooked investors. His ships were being recalled because he couldn't pay their crews. The blockade was falling apart from the inside. She found Ambassador Hyun immediately. We're winning, not through fighting, but through exposure. Every hour we hold out, more of their support crumbles. Hyun looked at the latest reports. But we're not safe yet. Korra still has her private fleet and she's desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things, she was right. In a hidden facility deep in council space, Trade Minister Korra watched her plans fall apart. The tax scheme was exposed. Her allies were abandoning her. The council was investigating her finances. Everything she had built over decades was crumbling, but she still had ships. And if she couldn't profit from humanity's submission, perhaps she could at least hurt them enough to feel vindicated. She sent new orders to her fleet. Forget the blockade. Hit their colony worlds. Make them pay for defying us. Admiral Sunwoo saw the fleet movements on his displays. They're repositioning. Looks like they're going after Mars or the Belt colonies. General Park slammed his fist on the table. We can't defend everywhere at once. We don't have to, Sunwoo said calmly. Captain Minho, how fast can you reposition the fleet? Depends where we're going, sir. Wherever they are, I want you to shadow their fleet. Stay close enough that they know you're there. Make them understand that if they attack our colonies, you'll hit them before they can escape. That's risky, sir. We'd be away from the gate. They could send other ships through. That's what they think. But the gate is mined. I had the engineers place proximity charges 3 days ago. Anyone trying to force their way through will get a very unpleasant surprise. Minho grinned. Devious, sir. I like it. The Resilience and her escorts broke formation and began pursuit of the enemy fleet. It was a bold move, almost aggressive. But it sent the right message. Wherever you go, we're coming with you. On the bridge, Jiwon tracked both fleets on her display. They're slowing down, sir. I think they weren't expecting us to follow. They thought we'd stay defensive, protect our territory and wait for them to hit us. But that's not how humans fight. We take the initiative. Hours passed in tense pursuit. The enemy fleet kept changing course, trying to lose their shadows. But wherever they went, Minho's ships followed. It became a game of nerves. Who would crack first? Ambassador Thule sent a private message to Hyun. The Torvian Confederacy battle group has just entered the sector. We are positioning ourselves between the human colonies and Korra's fleet. She will have to go through us to attack your people. Yun felt relief wash over her. When she replied, her voice was thick with emotion. Thank you, Ambassador. Your people honor us with their courage. Thule's response was simple. Honor recognizes honor. We stand with those who stand for what is right. The Torvian fleet was massive. 20 capital ships, each one larger than anything humanity had built. Their arrival changed the entire equation. Suddenly, Trade Minister Korra's private fleet was outnumbered and outgunned. Captain Minho saw the Torvian ships appear on his display and felt a weight lift from his shoulders. We've got backup. Big backup. The enemy fleet saw them too, and suddenly their bravado evaporated. They had signed up to blockade an isolated human system, not to fight the legendary Torvian Confederacy. Jiwon intercepted a transmission. Sir, 3 months had passed since Ambassador Hyun spoke that one word. 3 months since the galaxy nearly went to war. 3 months of trials, reforms, and rebuilding trust. The council chamber looked the same, but everything else had changed. Trade Minister Korra stood in a containment field at the center of the chamber. Her golden fur was matted and dull. Her amber eyes, once sharp with ambition, now showed only defeat. Behind her, Merchant Prince Havoc floated in his water tank, also confined. They were on trial for conspiracy, extortion, and unauthorized military action. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Dr. Yunji had done her work well. Financial records, communications, testimony from dozens of witnesses. The conspiracy was laid bare for everyone to see. Not just the fake tax on humanity, but years of similar schemes against other species. Chairman Morix, the elderly Kelvar who had taken over leadership, read the verdict. Trade Minister Korra and Merchant Prince Havoc, you have been found guilty of corruption, extortion, and abuse of council authority. You are stripped of all titles, all holdings, and all rights within council space. You are banished to the outer territories for the rest of your natural lives. No one in the chamber objected. Justice had been served, but the trials were just the beginning. The real work was reforming the council itself. Ambassador Hyun found herself at the center of those efforts, not because she sought power, but because she had earned respect. She worked with Ambassador Thule and delegates from 40 different species to draft new regulations. Transparency requirements for all financial decisions. Independent oversight committees. Rights for smaller species to challenge decisions by the major powers. It was slow, difficult work, but it was necessary. The reforms face opposition, Dr. Yoonji said one evening as they reviewed the latest draft. Too many species profit from the old system. Hyun nodded. That's why we need to be patient. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen if people are willing to fight for it. She looked out the window of her quarters at the stars. 3 months ago, she had said one word that changed everything. Now she was helping build something new, something better. It was harder than defiance in many ways, but it was just as important. Back in the Sol system, life was returning to normal. The blockade was gone. Trade routes were reopened. Earth's economy, which had suffered during the crisis, was recovering stronger than before. Captain Minho walked through the streets of Seoul on his first shore leave in months. The city was alive with energy. People recognized him and called out thanks. Children asked to take pictures with the famous captain who had faced down the blockade without firing a shot. He met with Admiral Sunwoo in a quiet restaurant, overlooking the Han River. The old admiral had retired officially, though everyone knew he still advised the government. "You did well, Captain," Sunwoo said over tea. "You showed restraint when it would have been easier to fight." "I had good training, sir." Minho smiled. "You taught me that the best victory is the one where no one has to die." The old admiral's eyes were distant, remembering. "I learned that lesson the hard way. I'm glad you didn't have to." They talked for hours about the future. Earth's fleet would be expanded, but carefully. The goal wasn't to threaten anyone, but to ensure humanity could always defend itself. Never again would they be in a position where extortion seemed like it might work. On the Resilience, still docked at the lunar shipyards for maintenance, Ji-won received a promotion. She was now a full lieutenant and would be taking a position as communications chief on a new exploration vessel. Her parents came to the ceremony. They were simple people, farmers from the Jeju colony, but they were proud. Their daughter had served Earth in its darkest hour and helped keep the peace. "Your grandmother would have been proud," her father said, his voice thick with emotion. "She lived through the border wars. She always said the best warriors are the ones who win without fighting." Ji-won thought about those tense days, watching the enemy fleet on her displays, knowing that one wrong move could start a war. "We got lucky, Dad. If Ambassador Thule hadn't shown up with the Torvian fleet, things might have been different." "Luck favors the prepared," her mother said wisely. "You were ready. Earth was ready. That's why we won." On Station Nexus Prime, a new alliance was being formalized. The Confederation of Free Worlds, they called it. Humanity, the Torvian Confederacy, and 38 other species who had joined together during the crisis. It wasn't meant to oppose the Council, but to provide a balance of power, a voice for those who believed in fair trade and mutual respect. Ambassador Hyun and Ambassador Thule stood together at the signing ceremony. They made an odd pair, a human woman barely reaching the chest of the massive reptilian warrior. But their partnership had changed galactic politics. "Your people took a great risk for us," Hyun said quietly. "I hope someday we can repay that debt." Thule's golden eyes met hers. "There is no debt between allies. Your courage inspired my people. You reminded us why honor matters more than convenience. That is payment enough." The alliance treaty was beautiful in its simplicity. Mutual defense, free trade, shared research, and most importantly, a commitment to stand together against any who would use power to crush the weak. Not everyone was happy about the new order. Some of the older, more powerful council members saw the Confederation as a threat to their influence. There were tense debates, political maneuvering, and occasional threats. But the balance of power had shifted. The little species weren't so little anymore when they stood together. Dr. Yoonji found satisfaction in the data. Trade between Confederation members had increased by 40%. Joint research projects were producing breakthroughs, and most importantly, no one had tried to extort anyone else. The system was working. She presented her findings to the council during a regular session. These numbers show what cooperation can achieve. When species work together freely instead of under threat, everyone prospers. Even some of the skeptical delegates had to admit she was right. The Confederation wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. And that success was attracting attention. Other species were applying to join. The movement was growing. 6 months after the crisis, Earth held a celebration. A holiday was declared, Freedom Day. Commemorating the moment, Ambassador Hyun spoke her defiant word. Across human space, people gathered to remember and honor those who had stood firm. In Seoul, a massive concert filled the streets. Musicians from 20 different human colonies performed. The crowd sang together. Millions of voices joined in celebration of their freedom and their unity. Admiral Sun Woo, officially retired but still respected by all, gave a speech at the main ceremony. He stood before a crowd of hundreds of thousands, with billions more watching across human space. 6 months ago, our ambassador said one word to the most powerful organization in the galaxy. She said no, not because we wanted conflict, not because we sought glory, but because it was the right thing to do, because freedom is not negotiable, because dignity matters more than safety. The crowd cheered. Sun Woo waited for silence before continuing. But saying no was just the beginning. The real victory came in what followed. We didn't fight a war. We built a coalition. We exposed corruption. We reformed broken systems. We proved that courage and justice can defeat greed and tyranny without firing a shot. More cheers. Sun Woo looked out at the sea of faces, young and old, from Earth and from the colonies. These were his people, the ones he had served for 50 years, the ones he had almost led into war. He was glad it hadn't come to that. Today we celebrate freedom, but let us remember that freedom requires vigilance. It requires courage. And sometimes, it requires just saying no to those who would take it from us. Ambassador Hyun watched the celebration from her quarters on Station Nexus Prime. She had been invited to return to Earth for the holiday, but she had work to finish. The council reforms were still being debated. The Confederation needed her guidance. There would be time for celebrations later. Dr. Yoonji found her there watching the broadcast. You should be down there receiving honors. Hyun smiled. I did my job. That's honor enough. Besides, this isn't about me. It's about all of us. Every human who stood firm, every ally who supported us, every person who believed that right matters more than might. They watched together as fireworks exploded over Seoul. Even from light years away, through the video feed, they could feel the joy and relief of their people. What happens now? Dr. Yoonji asked. The reforms will pass eventually. The Confederation is strong. We've won. What's next? Hyun thought about that. Now we prove it wasn't a fluke. We show the galaxy that this new way of working together is better than the old system. We help other species find their voice. We build something that lasts. On the Torvian homeworld, Ambassador Thule stood before his people's High Council. He was making his report on the human situation and the alliance they had forged. Some question why we risked war for an alien species, one of the High Council members said. What answer do you give them? Thule's scales shimmered as he stood tall. I tell them that we did not risk war. We prevented it. By standing with the humans, we showed the corrupt elements in the council that their schemes would not succeed. We reminded the galaxy that honor